All right, welcome back. And we're going to pick up where we left off last time talking about culture as it refers to a mythology. So remember, a culture is a shared set of beliefs, values, and customs, which really feels like something that you would talk about more in like a history class than a mythology class. So the idea to wrap your mind around is this one here, is that the reason we talk about culture is that a myth is considered to be true in the society and culture in which it was originally told. So when we really start digging deep and we see these common denominators in all of these variants of the myth, what we're really looking at is what a society believed, what they valued, and what they did. Okay. And for me, that's what is kind of fun to look at with mythology is you're not just looking at a set of stories, which I love, but you're looking at a set of stories that reflect a group of people. All right, so if you were in class, we would actually stop right here, and we would do this little group assignment called definition by contrast. So the last thing we're going to do, just kind of explaining what a myth is, before we get into like kind of breaking down the more details of that, is looking at what it's not. Okay, so these are like the 5 terms that I see most frequently confused with mythology, or things that people have asked me, like, what is the difference between this and this? And so I would want you to stop this video and try and see if you can look up what is a legend, what is a folktale, what is fiction, what is history, what is religion, and how are they different from that definition that I've given you already for what a myth is. So remember that the baseline definition that we're using for a myth is that it's a traditional tale believed to be true by the original teller, but it has partial reference to other important concepts. So pause this if you will, and see if you can look up these terms: legend, folktale, fiction, history, religion. How are they not the same as mythology? All right, so first things first, legend. This one is, these first two, legends and folktale, always connect to mythology. In fact, originally when I took over this class, it was called Myths, Legends, and Lore. And so we were going to try and address everything, but it was just too much for a semester. And so we divided that up. So legends, very closely connected to a myth, have some common denominators in that they are stories that are passed down from generation to generation. The big difference between a legend and myth is that legends are known to be based on something that is true, but people realize that it has been exaggerated or changed over time. Okay. And so the big difference there is that the myth, remember, is believed to be true by its original tellers. Legends are not. They know it's based on, there's like a kernel of truth there, but the version they're telling isn't true. So Santa Claus would be an example here, though there are people who believe in Santa Claus, mostly elves. Most people realize that Santa Claus is based off of Saint Nicholas. Okay, now Saint Nicholas was a real person, but he did not have flying reindeer or enslaved magical creatures to build toys for him like that. That is not true, and people who told the original story got that. Same thing, like if you're familiar with the King Arthur stories, which I love, like one of my favorite stories of all time, we know that there was very likely an actual king who did something to gain the respect of his country. Now, he didn't have dragons that he was fighting. He wasn't like assisted by a magical sorcerer or anything like that. We realize that stuff has been exaggerated, but there's a kernel of truth there. There was some leader that this was based on. That's a legend. Folktale, kind of similar, okay, in that it is a story, didn't move for me, that is passed down from generation to generation, usually by word of mouth. The difference here is, again, not believed to be true. Folktales typically are more vague stories that are designed to teach a lesson, where a myth might teach you something, but that's not necessarily the purpose of a myth, okay? It's there because it means something to the people, but it doesn't have like a direct moral like a folktale will, okay? Folktales will be things like The Boy Who Cried Wolf, where the lesson is clearly don't tell lies or you will be eaten by wolves. So here's something direct like that. They also usually have characters that are really, really broad, right? So I always bring this up in class. If you think about the main characters of the story, Little Red Riding Hood, who are they? And usually people will say like Little Red Riding Hood is the main character, but that's not a name, okay? She's a girl who's wearing a little red riding hood. That's like naming your child Jacket, right? She doesn't have a name, just like the villain of that story is the big bad wolf because he's big and he's bad and he's a wolf, right? So it's a story with vague characters who are there to teach you a lesson. And that lesson is don't go to grandma's house, or maybe don't talk to strangers, whatever it is. That's the difference in a folktale and a legend. We'll hit the last 3 in the next video. All right. Have a great day, guys. Merry Christmas.